Last night we let the liquor talk. Can't remember everything we said, but we said it all. You said how you wish I was somebody you never met. But baby, baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. Last night, kissed your lips, had you gripping sheets with your fingertips. Last bottle of Jack, we split the fifth. Just talking about life, going sip for sip. And you know you love to fight.
Do we see what's being done? Do we hear what's being done here? I'm wondering. So, Last Night has been the number one song in the country for 15 weeks this year. It is a country song by Morgan Wallen, who has, the word problematic is getting overused here. I have to think of another way of describing Morgan Wallen. But he comes into this whole thing with some baggage, including use of the N-word. And in the early stages of COVID, I think he was partying so hard, Saturday Night Live canceled him as a musical guest and stuff. But anyway, the song, which is a blackout song. It's like a, song about getting so drunk you only have vague memories of what you did last night. The song's called Last Night. And people are struggling with it a little bit for a bunch of different reasons, including their own ambivalence about all country music, which is a topic I'm hoping our show will retackle soon. But anyway, that's the famous postmodern jukebox group repurposing it as kind of a Bobby Caldwell type soul tune. All right, so what are we going to do here? We are going to do. If I sound like I'm just kind of refreshing my own memory about what we're going to do here, I'm a little fuzzy today, a little foggy today. And I think it's probably just brain-eating bacteria from an improperly chlorinated swimming pool. But there's the other possibility that I'm just really tired. And that tracks also. But I'm going to go with the brain-eating bacteria. Anyway, our number, if you want to call up. Did I just open that line there by mistake or something? Is that why that line's open? Oh, I just have to do something about that. So meanwhile, here's somebody else calling up. 888-720-WNPR. 888-720-9677. If I were a pilot, they wouldn't let me take off right now. I mean, there must be some check that they run through. Like, do you know what this instrument is? Do you know what happens when you pull back on that? I hope they just ask the pilots some basic questions so that they could establish, that they're fully present cognitively. Anyway, here we go. We are going to talk first to William of Middletown. Hi, William. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. Thanks. After hearing your opening, I'm thinking to myself, my concern is so minor compared to what's happening in the world today. But I was listening to your show on the short story the other day, and I kept waiting for you to address the short story genre that is, let me back up. I started collecting rare books about 40 years ago, and about 10 years ago, I shifted my focus to Victorian ghost stories, and I started reading people like M.R. James, Sheridan Le Fanu, and going on up into more modern times, to people who write what came to be known as weird fiction. But I was thinking, as you were talking about the different types of short story, that you left that whole genre out, and it's a really important segment of the short story sector. And I have gotten to the point where it's about all I read these days, and a lot of them are very rare and first edition old books, but I love them. So anyway, I just felt I had to get that in.
Well, I'm glad you got it off your chest. Just to sort of clue people in a little bit. So yeah, we did triggered by an essay by Rebecca Mackay, who wrote a Substack essay saying, people, I bet you haven't read a short story in a really long time. People don't read short stories anymore. Here's why they should. She offered about 5 reasons. Our senior producer, Lily Tyson, read that. And we've had Rebecca on the show before. She thought, this is great. We'll do that. And then we tried to do a show that would somehow or other mirror the style of short stories or the form of short stories. So instead of 3 segments, we did 5 little segments. And we talked to George Saunders and Amy Bloom and the fiction editor of The New Yorker. And We had two of our regular nose panelists analyze a short story that had been in the New Yorker. And we talked to Rebecca, of course. So that was the show. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the main reason we left that out, the thing that you're talking about, is no idea it exists. And I think the other problem is there are so many different substrata. We could have done romance short stories. We could have done this. We could have done that. But it's interesting to hear that. I think just in general, because you seem like a very nice person and I care about nice people, you might want to step away from this for a couple of weeks to try reading some other stuff. I'm a little worried that that's all you read anymore.
Well, I'm exaggerating. I do read other stuff. But it's one of the things I enjoy most.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, and I will endeavor to know more about it because that's exactly. Oh, I wanted to say one other thing, based on the first words out of your mouth. If it were not an unwieldy title, I would call these episodes calls about things that are minor compared to the bigger problems of the world. I don't think you should apologize for that. I think the entire purpose of this particular style of our show, these Ask or Tell Me Anythings, is to open the floodgates to things that are minor compared to the larger problems of the world. So nobody calling in here today, and the number, by the way, is 888-720-WNPR, 888-720-9677. It's like reading something before. I was sort of brushing up on something before I went on the air. And Kat Pastor was in the most adorable way trying to remind me that the show is starting in 30 seconds. And I just sort of wasn't looking up. I think that was kind of worrying you a little bit. But anyway, I'm here. I'm fully present. We are going to go to another call about something that is indubitably minor compared to the larger problems of the world, and therefore is in its proper place by being a phone call to this show. Once again, our numbers today, 888-720-WNPR, 888-720-9677. We are now talking to Mary from Kent. Hi, Mary.
Hi. This is Mary Kent. I'm Mary Williams.
Oh, okay. That's complicated.
I'm calling from Kent, Connecticut, and I'm just calling to say that I enjoy the Colin McEnroe show, especially because of the host, Jesse Thorne.
That's a pretty good impersonation of the person who does that promo.
Oh, thanks. The reason why I can do such a great impersonation is because I've heard it so many times. You need to switch things up.
Right. We do. We actually do make an effort to freshen up the promos and switch things up. And, the problem with the promos like that one is that because they kind of stand out, I mean, they're not like another promo. They're not a generic promo. They're not just like, here's what we do on this show. You remember them more. So after you've heard them 4 times, it's starting to bother you a little bit. I mean, in a way, I think we get punished for being a little bit more daring and original about how we conceive of promos because they'll burn out faster. We've talked about that among ourselves, but it's a good reminder. We need to kind of rotate them out again.
One point that I know you need to do it is you need to every single time I call it redoes the promos.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, we don't use that one a lot, and I actually think that one was kind of a good high concept promo, and I'm not even sure who that person is. I mean, I know Kat's on that promo, and then there's a male voice that I think only Kat knows the identity of, and I like that promo a lot. So I'm not getting rid of it, but and I don't think we're running it that much, but who knows? All right, here comes somebody, and I should say that you can call this show about issues that are minor compared to the larger problems of the world, but you could also call about something that's, not minor. I think Larry, I feel as though this is not a minor issue. And here's Larry from Bethel. You now have the floor. Larry.
Well, I have a potential headline, Mr. Sinners Repents, and that could be spelled REPENCE. I
see. So you took the liberty of writing a headline for your own phone call to a radio show, and at that, a headline that depends on visual recognition of the pun that's in the headline.
Well, I was thinking it could be used as a headline in a future article that may appear.
All right, and you'd be getting residuals, and obviously this is good financial planning. So, what is it you'd like to say about Mr. Former Vice President Pence?
Well, it's actually about Mr. Sinners, Mr. Robert Sinners, who was a Trump campaign local director of Election Day operations.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who he emailed 16 fake electors, directing them to quietly meet in the Capitol building in Atlanta the next day. I'm reading from a New York Times article.
Right. So he's a target in the Fannie Wills investigation, the RICO case that's probably going to be unveiled in a week or two, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Times article also states, in his testimony, this is referring to Mr. Sinners, I was caught by his name.
That is, we did a whole show about nominative determinism, where your name says something about who you turned out to be. So your name is David Bird and you turned out to be an ornithologist. I think Mr. Sinners may be, I think the jury's out, probably almost literally the jury's out about Mr. Sinners. We don't want to pronounce on his fate until, the system considers him, weighs his heart like a god of the underworld in Egyptian mythology, and then we'll know. But I see where you're headed, and I think Mr. Sinners may be headed there too.
And this line really, really got me. In his testimony to House investigators, Mr. Sinners later reflected on what took place. Quote, "I felt ashamed," unquote.
Well, there's something. That's already a level of philosophical and moral evolution that a lot of people haven't attained. I do want to say one thing kind of serious here, which is, and I think this is a piece by Henry Olson in the Washington Post, like maybe a week ago, but I think it's a point worth making so we don't get too polarized here. Olson, if that's who wrote it, makes the point, and I think it's a really true one. You know who saved America in 2021 was Republicans. Republicans saved America in 2021. Mike Pence refused to do what he was being pressured to do. Election officials like Brad Raffensperger and his deputy, Gabe Sterling or whatever his name is, in Georgia, and their counterparts, Republican counterparts in places like Michigan and Arizona, wouldn't do this thing. A bevy of Trump-appointed judges refused to make bizarre rulings in Trump's favor as he pursued 60 different cases in the courts trying to overturn an essentially legitimate election. A lot of Republicans stepped up. God knows, and I would add Brian Kemp in Georgia to that too. And Brian Kemp is no Jacob Javits Republican, he's like pretty hardcore. But a lot of Republicans wouldn't do the wrong thing. Now, a lot of Republicans would, and I hear from those Republicans, the local version of those Republicans, pretty regularly. But, I think that's important to say. The only way that we're going to have a functioning republic is if both sides of this highly polarized electorate agree to some basic core principles, and one of them is count the votes and then certify the election in favor of the person who got the most votes, state by state. And the fact that a lot of Republicans defied Trump, it shouldn't ever go unnoticed, and Pence is among them. Whatever else you think about him in other contexts, Pence refused to do the wrong thing, and we should salute that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so on we go. I would say one more quick thing about Georgia, because it is on the horizon. As I understand, and I'm kind of an expert in Georgia criminal law, but as I understand, so Georgia has its own RICO statute, which is an organized crime statute, and my understanding of the way that they handle these cases in Georgia. And if so, this is going to be a lot of fun to watch in a mean way. I just was being expansive, and bipartisan and possibly bipolar in a very polarized environment. Now I'm going to be mean. So if I understand the way they do these cases in Georgia, these RICO cases, what you do is you get a lot of defendants. You get at least 12. And then you charge them all as if they are all going to be part of the trial. And then you just kind of flip people one by one until there's only 2 or 3 defendants left, So there might be 12 at the beginning. But by the end, it's going to be Trump and Giuliani and maybe Eastman or something. And everybody else will have cut a deal. Because one thing that I've been told time and again by former prosecutors, both federal and state, is that the toughest people in the world, the people who, who look like you just couldn't break them, you get them in the room, you tell them they're facing jail time, and they will turn their grandmother in. They will turn anybody in. So if, in fact, that is the way that Fannie Willis pursues this case in Georgia, I mean, you'll be able to see that happen, not literally, but you'll feel it as a disturbance in the force. There'll be a slight ripple. And suddenly Obi-Wan or Yoda will look up and go, flipped, another defendant has in Georgia. That's actually my impersonation of Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is one of the reasons I'm not a more successful impersonator. All right, so let's go to the phones here. 888-720-WNPR. We have so many people wanting to talk about so many interesting things. Actually, not that many people. There's room for you if you call right now. Nancy in Litchfield, you have the floor. More short stories, huh?
Yes, I wanted to thank you for your short story program. Back in April of 2020, during the beginning of COVID, the four sisters and our husbands who live across the country, from California to Boston, started doing a Zoom short story every Friday, and we have continued to do it for over 200 stories every Friday. We have learned so much. And of course, we started with George Saunders, started with Love Letters, a story he had written in the New Yorker, and have done Murakami, Sam Shepard, Hemingway, Doris Lessing. And your show gave us a whole group of other ones to start talking about. And we love it.
Wow, that's really impressive. So, I mean, you already mentioned some pretty interesting names. I don't know, do one or two stories stand out as just they got everybody excited?
Oh, well, Murakami is fascinating. His stories are so off the wall. And George Saunders. But then you go and do Raymond Carver, and, you get a whole different perspective. And Alice Munro, unfortunately, they're a little long for us to do. And we just started doing William Trevor, who none of us had really ever read before. And his short stories are fascinating. Oh, and not even going to remember Willa Cather, Baldwin, and any others that.
But you guys, I mean, I salute you. Well, yeah, Chekhov obviously is, widely considered maybe the master. Yeah. But I salute you for the whole project. And also, you really covered the waterfront, too. You didn't kind of just, I think a lot of people go, oh, let's read some Cheever or something, which is fine. But, yeah, you really went all over the place. And that's great. You're lucky to have so many good co-conspirators in this particular activity.
Well, you added to us by giving us, and anybody who gets to interview George Saunders and we get to listen to it, he has the most incredible sense of humor and is just delightful. You know what
I noticed about George Saunders is, I mean, he's kind of a big cheese, right, in this world, and maybe even beyond this world. He's really a mensch. I mean, you really get that feeling. Even
absolutely.
I don't know what got on the air because we pre-taped the interview, and I think Lily had to cut it a little bit. But even at the beginning, I don't know. You can just sort of tell. I can tell. I've been doing this for so long. I can usually kind of tell whether I'm dealing with a nice person. And this guy, he is not a drunk on his, he's not using his own product. He's not drunk on his own press. There's some metaphor I'm looking for, some idiom that I'm not thinking of. But you know what I'm saying.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He is just so self-effacing. He likes writing and he likes talking to people about it. So they're fascinating.
Yeah, you just feel like if you were sitting out next to him on a plane, and you started talking to him, he wouldn't go, look, I got to read this book, leave me alone. He would just chat along with you. Artie, I got to go, but this is a wonderful thing that you're doing. Okay, we got John and we got Lucy. Let's do both of them and then we'll take a late break. Okay, so hopefully nobody will be super verbose here. Here's Lucy from Bloomfield. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, how are you today?
I am just fine, but a little foggy.
Good. Well, I am too.
Except for the brain-eating bacteria, I'm fine.
No, it's the heat for me.
Okay.
At any rate, I have another piece of minutia to add to the pile of things that are little compared to what's going on today.
Right.
But it's about grammar. I'm not really well schooled in grammar, but I do know when I hear something that's really wrong. And that is more and more today. First of all, I should say, I understand that language changes and grows. But I am hearing this sort of statement. The house belongs to John and I. And people will, I hear it on television, I hear it on radio. I don't think I've ever seen it written, because written things are usually proofread.
Oh, they were in the good old days. Not so much anymore. And certainly the fact that people write constantly online on social media has actually, I think, eroded written English and written language in general, because now you have people who are they're not only not proofread, they often have rabies or something, and they're still writing. So, yeah, I mean, just to straighten everybody out about that, that would be I. The pronoun I in that case is the object of a verb, of a transitive verb. So it should be John and me. The house belongs to John and me. Actually, it's the object of a preposition. Excuse me. The house belongs to John and me. But it's an objective case, so it has to be me. Now, there is an interesting exception, at least in the area of verbs, and that would be so-called state of being verbs. So, I mean, the correct way to say this would be, the villain is I. The villain is she, because is a state of being verbs. And the state of being verbs, somewhere up in heaven, Mr. Lou Friedman is going to smile now, are be, is, am, or was, were, been, appear, become, feel, look, seem, sound, smell, taste, grow, remain, stay. That's like the only thing I still know, like at all of the world's knowledge. I know all the state of being verbs. But thank you for giving me a somewhat forced opportunity to demonstrate that fact. All right, quick conversation with John from Cromwell, then we'll take a break. We'll have lots of open lines on the other side of that break, but here is John. John.
Hi. I love your show. And a while back, you did a show on time travel, and I could not believe that the movie Predestination never even got a mention. It is the greatest time travel story ever. And the only reason that I could think of that it didn't get mentioned is almost anything you say about it that's not the title is like a spoiler. And I'm really into time travel stories because I'm a time traveler. So far, I have traveled 70 years into the future.
I see what you did there. Well, I would guess, first of all, I've never heard of this movie until just this very second. But
you gotta watch it.
Well, I mean, I get that feeling from you anyway. It seems to me that it might be time for a fresh look at this particular movie, which came out in 2014. It's an Australian science fiction action thriller film. And who doesn't love a really good Australian science fiction action thriller film? I mean, they're like the best. But anyway, one person who's in it who looks like she might have the female lead would be the Australian actor Sarah Snook. And things that have Sarah Snook in them are very interesting to people these days. So that alone might cause me to say, well, I wonder what she was like before she was Shiv. So I will look at it based on that alone. All right. Well, John, continue with your travel through time. I think you got another great 30 years ahead of you. And so I'll talk to you in the future, either the near or far distant future. But thank you for calling today. Our number, we're going to take a break right now. Our number is 888-720-WNPR. 888-720-9677. You can call about things that are small compared to the bigger problems in the world.
Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven? You'll find your fortune falling all over town. Be sure that your umbrella is upside down.
Get your feet on the ground, take a breath now. Move your head, look around. Nothing is gonna hurt you. Safe now. Let's begin on this time.
So, I plan the music for these Ask or Tell Me Anything shows. And one of the things that I do is I say to myself, I say, you have brain-eating bacteria. No, I say, I want to hear something that doesn't sound like everything else. And it also sounds cheerful and fun. Like it makes me think, oh, this is a fun show. I think I'll call 888-720-WNPR and see if that's the right number. I'm just guessing. 888-720-9677. I think I'll call that. It could be the number for the show. It is, by the way. But it's, it's actually kind of hard to find something that doesn't sound like it. This is a artist from the Netherlands. And it's kind of cheerful, happy song, but it also kind of doesn't really, and I know it's a lot of, songifying, vocal effects going on in there. But it kind of sounded different, and I liked it. And so that's why you're hearing it right now. I have a rationale for many of the things I do. I mean, 80% of my life, completely irrational. But yeah. I just want to say, see, sometimes I look at the board and the topics that are there. So here are the 4 topics that are on the board right now. Wants mounted police back, another grammar thing, rabbits don't like carrots, and Jacques Cousteau. That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the distillation of what Ask or Tell Me Anything, also known as things that small things. I forget I forget the whole trope now. Things that are small compared to the bigger problems of the world. But anyway, that's the distillation of what we're hoping to do here. There's just no doubt in my mind. I have to go to the rabbits don't like carrots thing. Not only because it's funny, but I actually agree with it. Anyway, Chris from Bristol, you, in fact, are on the airwaves.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I talk about this with everybody that is willing to listen. Rabbits don't like carrots, they're not going to eat them in the wild. It would give them diabetes if you fed them to them all the time and make them sick. They don't dig them up and eat them. It's a root. It's a complete myth. And yet you go to any country in the world, you're probably going to find a baby toy with a rabbit and a carrot.
Do you think Bugs Bunny started the whole thing, or was there a pre-Bugs trope that Bugs Bunny and Warner Brothers was just buying into?
It was 2 years before that, right? It was 1934.
I like how you just said right, like I would know that. It was just 2 years before that, right? Like it was 19. Right. Anyway, continue.
1934. It happened one night. Clark Gable. It got nominated for what? Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, everything. So everybody knew this movie. If you watch that movie, Colin, you will see in that movie that Clark Gable is on the side of the road and he is talking while chewing on a carrot.
Yeah.
And when you watch that clip, you're like, oh my God, it's Bugs Bunny.
All right.
So he does this. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows this movie at the time. So then 2 years later, 1936, Mel Blanc creates Bugs Bunny. And the first time you see him, he goes, "What's up, Doc?"
Yeah.
First of all, that phrase, "What's up, Doc?" was in that movie for the first time ever. And there's a character in that movie named Bugs. So he knows the movie.
But you have,
the joke.
A lot of people call up this show and they kind of know what you really know what you're talking about here. I mean, this is really impressive. I'm sure people back away from you at barbecues at a certain point, but I like this.
I try to make sure I got the fence between them so they can't beg up too much, but yeah.
Actually, another thing about It Happened One Night, there's a scene where Clark Gable and Claudette Colbert, they cross, is it Claudette Colbert? Colbert, is it? I think it is. Yeah. So they cross a road, and just for a moment, the camera lingers on the road, and a roadrunner goes by chased by a coyote on roller skates, motorized roller skates. And so that also got that thing going, too. So there's a lot. It Happened One Night has a lot to answer for. But yes, I've had the same experience. So we have rabbits running all over where we live. And so I like animals and stuff. And I would every once in a while, you're like cutting up the carrots and there's still kind of the little butt end of the carrot,
Right.
So I would toss it out the door. Here rabbits, and I see rabbits running all over the place. And I also see that carrot sitting out there the next day. And after this process repeated itself, 75 times, I started to get the message. They don't like carrots. They don't want the carrots. I don't know about the diabetes part, because if you put out a Heath bar, they'll eat everything. They'll eat the wrapper, and then they'll be, pounding like zombies at your door. But they don't like carrots. I think there's a special destiny for you. I mean, I really feel as though you're the person who is appointed to come to Earth and spread this message. And I feel to whatever degree I've been a vessel, I am proud.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I am very proud.
It's kind of terrifying if you think about it. I mean, everybody got the joke at the time, but nowadays nobody knows who Clark Gable is. Nobody gets the joke. And that's like a terrifying game of telephone where in this case, it's not that big of a deal, but that could be information that could be much more important, and the general populace has no idea that they're duped.
Right. Well, I mean, yes, this is a whole area of life. I'm going to say goodbye and thank you. But this is a whole area of life that the show is very interested in, too. Sort of pieces of knowledge that fall away. And connective tissue of knowledge that falls away. And we also do a show occasionally about an episode about mesofacts. Mesofacts are things that change. You know, you sort of thought dinosaurs look one way, and that's how you think about dinosaurs for the rest of your life, even though it turns out dinosaurs didn't look anything like that. That's the most common example. But we're really interested in mesofacts, things where the knowledge actually changes. I mean, rabbits and carrots doesn't really fit into that. But I like the idea that that it comes from a Clark Gable movie and people have forgotten everything about that movie. And I have another version of that. If there were going to be a lot of time for me today, I was going to bring it up, but I don't think there will be. So, because people have a lot of things they want to talk about, including Adrienne from West Hartford. You are on the air.
Thank you, Colin. So I think that bringing back mounted policemen into cities, especially into troubled neighborhoods, would be a very calming mode of policing. And obviously you couldn't get all policemen up on horses, but having a few in a troubled neighborhood would probably make the denizens of the neighborhood even feel somewhat more sympathetic to the unmounted police.
I think it's an interesting idea. Let me just mention several things. You know, one thing, because we got a lot of grammar people calling up today, it's technically a misnomer. The policeman isn't mounted. The horse is mounted. The horse is mounted by the policeman. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
So the problem, I think your idea is a very nice one, and I think it has some real advantages. There are other reasons why mounted police exists. They give the officer a better view of the surroundings. In other words, you can see farther because you're up high, and you can move from one place to another relatively quickly. They were used all over the world. I believe Australia, which, by the way, I don't know if you know this, is the place where the movie Predestination was made. Australia is the place that has the longest continuously operating mounted police operation. It's not Canada, it's Australia.
How do you know that?
I just know these things. It was in the movie. Sarah Snook plays a mounted policewoman in the movie. But here's the problem, and I'm not casting asparagus on your idea, I promise. But authoritarian regimes like them for crowd control. You know, I mean, and by the way, it's not just horses. If you go to parts of the Middle East, there are the mounted police who are on camels. But, you know, if you want to, charge at a crowd, who are demonstrating in the Arab Spring for freedom or Black Lives Matter here or something like that, horses with police persons on them are sometimes used in an authoritarian fashion. There's a dark side to it, is all I'm saying. Which doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. The force has a dark side, and we use the force.
Well, I mean, better horses than snarling dogs, right?
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, I don't know. I'll take being bitten over being trampled by a horse, I think, if I have to make that rather bleak choice. But anyway, I see your point. There is something nice about the whole idea, and it could have a calming effect in troubled neighborhoods. But I feel like we just have to sort of say it's at best a 60-40 thing. All right, let's see. I got to keep going here. Here we go with Linda in Wallingford, another grammar thing. Hi, Linda.
Hi. You know what? I turned. Okay, you're off now.
Okay.
I just want to say I really enjoy your show, especially because I see you as definitely a wordsmith. I like to think I am as well. I have a really big gripe about grammar, though. Because I'm an oldie and, in school we were taught good grammar and it's not taught anymore. I know that for a fact because I'm a newly retired teacher. The thing that bothers me the most, and you hear with even newscasters do it, who should be exemplifying our good grammar because people watch them all the time, is when people say things like, me and Sam went to the store.
Right. Which is the obverse of the thing the other person, Lucy, was calling up about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can't be the only problem, the objective versus subjective cases.
It is so common today, though. It is constant. All my teacher friends do. They're all young women, and they all do the same thing. They all say that all the time. It drives me out of my mind.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know. I sort of feel like what people say when they're talking is in a different category, and people have always taken great liberties with speech while they're talking. And I think I just try not to let it bother you so much because you will continue to be bothered. I mean, the problem is not going to fix itself or be fixed by anyone.
No.
So the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to get more and more vexed. Like the still vexed Bermoothes in The Tempest. All right, so we have to move on here. I'm thinking, I don't know what you're thinking, Cat Pastor. I'm thinking maybe we should take our break here. What do you say about that? She's made a gesture of compliance or at least, mild agreement. So we'll take a break. But let me just say, Mary is all ready to talk about Jacques Cousteau, and who doesn't love that? Susan is a driving issue. An issue about your driving, not hers. And there's more to talk about as well as we go. 888-720-WNPR.
This is tonight. Run a red light. Forget the morning. This is tonight. It's the bar taking off the door split. A few weeks and I can work it. Keep it simple, keep the same crowd. We're on the inside. I'm the one now.
Oh, we're back. So we're back, and it's time to say thank you. I was lost in thought, actually. I was sitting here alone. It was just me and my brain-eating bacteria in this world we never made. All right, so the technical producer of today's show is Cat Pastor, and the producer of this episode, the person screening calls and telling me facts occasionally, is Jonathan McPants. We're about to take a phone call from Mary, and the number is 888-720-WNPR. You can hear me orienting myself right now. 888-720-9677. And we have lots of open lines. I actually have also some soliloquies that I could do if people don't call. But and I'm thinking about renaming. I think maybe we need to rebrand the show. I mean, Ask or Tell Me Anything is fine, but it could be a mounted camel that we have ridden as far as it can go. And like in Lawrence of Arabia, as in Lawrence of Arabia, I know there are grammar people listening. As in Lawrence of Arabia, maybe the camel is about to collapse into the dust of the desert. And I think this could be called, speaking of classic movies, and let's see what McPants thinks about this, The Hill of Beans show. Because the running theme of today's show is that people can call up about things that are not important compared to the bigger problems of the world. And if you think about that line from Casablanca, the problems of three little people. I can't do Bogart. I don't have it. But the problems of three little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. Except on this show, your problems are guaranteed to amount to a hill of beans. Perhaps not more, and not even a very big hill. In fact, we might start assigning actual sizes to your own particular hill of beans. Let's try this when Mary calls up. Mary of Collinsville is here to talk about Jacques Cousteau, about whom I haven't really thought that much recently, but she clearly has. Molly, you have the floor.
Thank you. So Jacques Cousteau, for those who are much younger than us and don't remember or never knew, was the oceanographer, really cool guy. And his idea of what to do about problematic teenagers who are disgruntled and don't want to be with their parents, and this is a worldwide phenomenon, was to gather them on research vessels from all different countries and have them work together to do research, oceanography research. And my daughter was pretty happy at home, but I still thought it would have been really, really cool if she got together with these people from all over to do research. And his point, other than it was an interesting way to get people to do what he wanted to do, was that once they went back to their home countries, they would be less likely to want to go to war with the cool people that they met on the ship from other places that maybe their country wanted to go to war with. So he thought it would have a dual purpose.
Yeah, I mean, except for that 1 year where one of his interns was Idi Amin, I think it worked out fine. I think it's, You're going to get a bad intern now and then. We've had the problem too. But no, I think it's a lovely idea. And it's good that you – I'm going to award you – I'm going to say that your call and your idea is a medium-sized hill of beans, which is respectable. It's a respectable thing. I think you understand that I'm saying this is a decent-sized hill of beans that you've called up about Jacques Cousteau.
And where can I fetch it?
Well, you don't actually get a hill of beans. We have to work that out with the promotions people.
All right, be careful with that because I was all excited.
I know. Well, like so many of my promises, this one is an empty one. But all right. So that was Molly from Collinsville, who just won a medium-sized hill of beans, which she can claim in the parking lot of 1046 Asylum Avenue at her leisure. And if you don't get your hill of beans, call Lauren Komrosky, who is like somebody very important here. Seems like maybe a person who would be in charge of this, if this were anything. All right. We have another call here. It's Susan. Susan from Groton. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Colin.
You sound like you're on the road, and you actually have a motoring call for us.
I do have a motoring call. I am wondering when and why people started driving their cars in the passing lane instead of in the traveling lane.
Well, don't they drive their cars in both lanes?
Yeah, but it used to be that you would travel in the slow lane if you were driving slowly. You would travel in the traveling lane or the middle lane if you were just driving normal speed or a little above the speed limit. And then the passing lane was relegated for passers.
Right.
And now we get passers. So we get people driving their cars in the passing lane or the fast lane at 65 miles an hour.
Right. So
I want to get beyond them.
That would be good to get beyond them. Of course, they're trying to get beyond you. That's the reason they're driving so fast. But and why they're weaving through traffic. So yeah, I mean the reason people do it. Sometimes the people do it because the person in the lane to the left of them is driving so slowly. And if there's only two lanes, you either are going to go 46 miles an hour on the interstate or you're going to pass in the other lane. And I sort of find that kind of forgivable. I mean, if it's getting ridiculous. But in a 3-lane situation like the one you just described, here's the problem. The person, let's call the person that you're talking about. Let's identify that person for evidentiary purposes in our speaking indictment is the jerkface. So the jerkface wants to go 75 miles an hour. There's somebody in the middle lane who's going about 55 miles an hour and somebody in the far left lane who's going about 65 miles an hour. The jerkface wants to go 75 miles an hour, sees that the far right-hand lane is open. There's nobody using it for any purpose whatsoever and thinks, that's where I can go 75 miles an hour. I can't do it in the left lane, the so-called passing lane, because there's somebody there who doesn't want to go as fast as I want to. I'm not apologizing for this behavior. I'm not rationalizing it. I'm not normalizing it. I'm just telling you that's why it happens. Right?
Well, I think you misunderstood.
All right. I frequently do.
Okay. So I'm in the middle lane.
Yes.
And I'm traveling at say 60.
Okay.
And I want to pass the person in front of me.
Right.
They're not driving.
Yes.
So I want to go over to the left lane,
yes,
pass, and go back to the middle lane.
Right.
But I go over to the left lane to pass, and the person there is sitting at 60 miles an hour.
Yes.
And they're not going to budge.
Right.
They're traveling in the passing lane.
Right.
That's what annoys me.
Oh, so that's what you don't like. I see what you mean. I thought you meant that you were wondering why people pass on the far right. But you're saying why don't those people just use the passing lane the way it was designed for people who momentarily want to pass, but then will want to will resume their. I don't think anybody understands that at all, and I think if they did understand it, they wouldn't care. People on the roads are monsters. They're horrible, monstrous, crazy people. You're imagining a society, an ideal society that doesn't exist, right? This is the society of people on interstate highways is a complete dystopia. It is a failed state. So you're asking me sort of a question about why a failed state isn't better at parliamentary procedure. And I think my answer is it just never is going to be, right?
But it was.
It was. Well, there was once a time. Yeah, every failed state was a working state. They don't start failed. They start as working democracies or something, and then some crazy guy in mirrored sunglasses takes over, or something, or there's a junta, and I guess that's the same thing. Anyway, I think that's the answer. I can't give you hope. I don't think we're going back.
So
eventually,
I just have to give up?
Well, you'll get a jetpack
on this?
eventually. Well, I don't know. Give up is just the wrong. You have to just sort of accept the fact that not everybody that you're dealing with on an interstate even believes in the set of rules that you're describing. I think you're describing the rules quite accurately, but you're describing a utopia, and we don't live in a utopia. We don't even live in, a mildly sub-utopia. We live basically in the Road Warrior movie. There are guys named Humongous, driving around with, spikes sticking out of their cars and stuff like that. And we just want to, get the oil out of the settlement or whatever happens to that movie anyway, Susan, I think you're an admirable person. I think you, if everybody was like you, things would be better. But everybody is not, which is why things are not better. All right. So we're coming to the end of another magical. How many beans? What size beans is that? I think she could have because of her spirit. I like her spunk. I like spunk. Because of her spunk, I'm going to give her a slightly bigger hill of beans than Molly got. I'm going to say it's a upper medium-sized hill of beans. And once again, these beans can be claimed at your leisure at 1049 or something Asylum Avenue. If you come here, there won't be any beans. I just want to be clear about that. And if you have the security guard call me, I won't be here. Somebody else will have to deal with this problem. So don't come and get your beans. But anyway, you did win some beans, but they're putative beans. They don't really exist. I thought at some point today, because I'm quite eager to have a conversation about how to cut sandwiches. Because it turns out one of my friends from college is actually the kind of person who, even at a drive-in where you order through a window, will explain that he wants his sandwich cut on the diagonal. And I think I'm persuaded that there's a real rationale for this. But I also think about, what does the person on the other side of the drive-in window think? Really? Really? It matters that much that I have to cut the sandwich a certain way? Anyway, that's a whole other hill of beans, as we might say. We're going to say goodbye instead right now. Thanks to Kat. Thanks to Pants. Thanks to you.